I used to subconsciously buy things just to feel good for a moment, but the dopamine hit from buying new items never gave me lasting happiness. Eventually, I slowly started to think about how to make purchases that truly work for me. Today, I'm going to talk about how overconsumption wastes your life and how you can prevent this with conscious consumerism. I'll discuss the specific problems that overconsumption brings, like a cluttered space and mind, and the financial burden of overconsumption. I'll also cover tangible solutions I've implemented to make intentional decisions about the items I purchase. By the way, my name is Carly. On this channel, I make videos around living more intentionally. I talk about personal finance and also the business side of the modeling industry. If you're interested in any of those topics, please don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you don't miss my videos. A recent study from UCLA showed that the average American home has 300,000 items. And it's possible that members of these average households don't buy all of these items. For example, some items might have been gifted or given for free. But the fact remains that most of the things in our homes we do buy. Once we start buying all of these items, unless we remove other items at the same pace, all of our things inevitably begin to accumulate, which then leads to clutter and disorganization. And it's one thing to be okay with disorganization. I get that everyone has their own personal tastes, but I think one thing we often overlook is the mental and physical energies it takes to keep track of all of the items that we own. This includes putting them away, maintaining these items, and then eventually getting rid of these when we no longer want them. Personally, I feel really guilty when I throw something away that works perfectly fine. But at the same time, it takes energy to find a proper home for it. There's growing evidence that clutter affects our anxiety levels, our ability to sleep, and also our ability to focus. I think on a large scale, many of us inherently realize that because Marie Kondo, a woman who has revolutionized decluttering and organization, is a household name. Even outside of clutter, overconsumption is a huge financial burden and leads to a lack of fulfillment. If we're being paid a salary, we're trading our time for money. That's just the way it is. Also, our growth is generally linear because each promotion is a % increase of our base salary. When we use our salary money to buy things that may not even matter to us, we essentially waste a few hours of our lives. I know that sounds really dramatic. I referenced in a previous video that a $100 shopping spree, if you're making $20 an hour, at face value costs maybe 5 hours of your time. And mind you, we haven't even accounted for income tax, so realistically, it costs closer to 6 to 7 hours of your time. And keeping in mind the fact that we still have to pay for our overhead expenses like rent and utilities, when a previous version of me bought a shirt that costed 3 hours of my time that I only ultimately ended up wearing like maybe twice, I decided that's not how I want to spend my time or my money. And there are other things we can do with our money and time, like investing in our friends, investing in ourselves, or just saving money for a rainy day. I talk more about what you can do with your money aside from participating in consumerism here. Many Americans are in debt. Chances are when we buy these things that don't fulfill us, we probably can't even afford it in the first place. So here's a solution. We won't escape the message that buying things can make us happy unless we go live under a rock. I'm not gonna do that. Though sometimes buying things can make us happy, but usually that's if we're purchasing with intentionality. Buying things to fill a void is a message we will continue to see because we are so plugged into different platforms that serve us ads. It's up to us to specifically examine what purchases truly bring us joy. One simple thing that has helped me cut back on my purchases is waiting. I don't have a set time, but I might wait at least 1 week, sometimes up to 3 weeks, maybe more depending on how big the purchase is. So the moment I feel the urge to buy something because I see something cute or cool, I take a pause to step back and try to envision how this item will fit into my life. I think about whether it's worth the money, time, and energy for me to acquire this thing. The reality is the majority of the purchases we're making probably aren't time sensitive. We've lived up to this point without that item. So do we really need it right this second? And obviously, if it is time sensitive in some cases, then this point doesn't apply. I have some core memories of items that I waited on and ultimately never purchased. Whenever I reflect back on these things, I know I made the right choice because I know I wouldn't be using those things now. There are other items I waited for and ultimately did buy after doing more research on finding the best versions of them. And usually just waiting to purchase these items cuts down on my desire for them 75% of the time. Speaking of research, while we're waiting to purchase these things, we can do more research to find the best brands or the best quality version of this thing. Also, we can think through how we envision ourselves using the item, whether we align with the brand values, and also whether we see ourselves using these items for decades. We can also think about whether this item holds value monetarily. Like, would we be able to resell this and recoup some percentage of what we paid for? If it breaks, is it easy to fix? And do we see ourselves continue to get value out of it, regardless of what stage of life we're in? I think these questions can help us decide whether the item truly is worth purchasing. I would much rather wait a few months to ultimately buy something that I know I can use for years than to buy something on a whim and only use it for 6 months before realizing I probably didn't really have a need for it. Every so often, I like to reflect on my past purchases and think about what are some of the best or most useful purchases I've ever made. It's not necessarily something I specifically set aside time for, though you can if you want, but rather I'll just be using a very well-loved item and I'll think, this was a great purchase. On the flip side, I'll also think about what is something that I bought that ended up being way less useful than I thought it would be. I think these reflections can really give us a little bit more clarity around what may or may not be good purchases for us going forward. Impulse purchases probably don't make us happy. At least that's the case for me. We all have different relationships with the things we buy, but casual purchases not only lead to clutter, they are often a financial burden and lead to a lack of fulfillment. Instead of partaking in consumerism, we can take a beat before purchasing the item. I like to wait 1 to 3 weeks. In that time, we can research the item we want to purchase. On a more general level, we can also reflect on our own past purchases and think about what made us happy, what sparked joy, or what items we use really, really well. If you like this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you liked this video, you would also really enjoy this video on a step-by-step guide to overcoming overconsumption.